How to make a global impact with local engagement. Hi, my name is Marcin Wojciech-Żebrowski, and this is the newest episode of Urbcast, my podcast about urbanism, architecture, and many more. I am very happy to share with you the newest episode of this podcast in English, especially that today we will be talking about how to appreciate the localhood of our cities and not only the cities, and also about how we can make a global change with those local activities, with the local innovations. And the reason why I'm talking about it is also because I was a part of the Act Now Mayors Conference, which is a 3-day event that aims to foster change between the local decision makers, experts of local innovation, and young change makers. This year's conference has focus on the topic Global Crisis Call for the Local Innovation. Act Now, in general, is an international program run by the Innovation in Politics Institute based in Vienna, which supports local politicians in tackling the current challenges they face, such as migration flows, the climate crisis, and increasing social division resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. The Act Now initiatives include, among many, the conference, the network, and also the local labs that my guest will elaborate on today. And speaking about my today's guest, who is Mathis Dippon, a local innovator and program designer, but maybe actually it's better that you introduce yourself, Mathis.
Hello, I'm Mathis Dippon, working with the Innovation Politics Institute as a program manager, and I'm the responsible curator of the Act Now Mayors Conference, and I'm managing the Act Now Mayors Network. I'm happy to be in this podcast.
Thank you. And I think that now we can start our conversation. Mathis, welcome to Urbcast. I'm very happy that you are here.
Yeah, hi. I'm also very happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Actually, when the podcast is being released, we are after the conference, the Act Now Mayors Conference that we are meeting for here in Stuttgart, but that's just the end of the story. I would like to start with the proper beginning of the story, because you are the local innovator and program designer in the Innovation in Politics Institute. And if you could also say about your interest in the local part of our cities, and as we will probably discuss also, not only cities.
My part within the institute is to take care of mayors and of local communities. And we always think about ways how to support them to implement transformative action, how they can meet the challenges they have, how we can equip and inspire them to implement sustainable practices. And we have a Act Now Mayors Network for innovative and value-driven mayors from all over Europe, but also the MENA region, to really connect different parts of the world and to bring them together. But also we have a new initiative, the European Capital of Democracy, which is a brand new initiative which should boost local democracy in Europe.
If we talk about the global impact, but the local engagement, I think that we should also talk a bit by defining what does the local mean. How do you understand the notion of the localhood?
Well, maybe in a more general way, I think we can agree that we have to transform the way how we live together in a very fundamental way, right? And if we agree on this topic or on this question, my key question is, how can you do it? My deep conviction is that the local level offers the best opportunity to transform the way how we live together. Why? Because people or human beings are reluctant to change their habits. So they have to experience new habits so that they can change their habits. And at local level offers a framework which reduces complexity, which can brings people easily together because they live next to each other, or they're going to school together, or they're going to work together. And that's why the local level or local communities offers a great chance really to drive local action and local change, and hopefully and finally a local transformation. And I think, for instance, if you experience a car-free city or inner part of a city and get to know the advantages of such a car-free setup, people will like it, but they have to experience it, and the local level offers the possibility to really implement sustainable practices.
You work with local communities, with local level of engagement as well for some time now. And I'm also wondering about your observations about it, because like when I look about the global trends and also this transformation that happens globally, I see the trend that a lot of things change during or after the corona pandemic. And as well, I think it might be with how we perceive the local in our life. Do you think that we just started being aware about how important it is to be acting in the local conditions? Was it like mostly because of corona, or do you think that we were also conscious about this local level, local layer in our cities or in our towns even before corona?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you could give several answers to that. For sure, we became more aware of our neighbors and of our surrounding in times we couldn't travel or couldn't travel so easily. And we had to take care of each other, keep the distance, but keep the physical distance, but be socially connected. And I think the corona crisis played a big part in this question, because people thought, okay, why is the place or the street in front of my house not so nice to hang out there? And that's why we definitely became more aware of our direct surrounding, and also thought about the possibilities to make an impact or shape it, and to have more green spaces, to have more leisure places around our homes and our apartments. So yeah, I think the corona crisis played a big role, but I'm not sure, or I'm still exploring and thinking about how sustainable this development will be, because now everything goes back to normal, and I hope we can sustain those parts which improved our living together.
Yeah, and I can add to that in some places, for example, in Denmark, or especially in Copenhagen, in which I live, you can't feel that there was corona pandemic anymore because it was officially over. Here in Germany, I see that people still wear face masks. So maybe it's still like one step behind if it comes to those regulations. But if we talk again about the local life and local level of how our cities and villages and small towns are acting, you said that we kind of realized what does it mean to grow as a community, as a local community, that we started to be more conscious also about the localhood. And I would like to talk about the local innovation, because in one of the articles I was reading, you've also mentioned that if we would like to have this global impact, we need to act locally. But if we would like to act locally, we would need to first reduce the complexity. Could you develop that thought behind it?
Sure. Maybe the first aspect is that in our general discussion about urban innovation, we sometimes forget that there are not only big metropoles in our world, but also rather small or rural communities. And we should also, or it's my conviction that we also have to focus on those communities who might have other political views or other worldviews in general. And I think the local level reduces complexity because, first of all, there are less people. If you focus on the national state, for instance, there are more people with more needs and more beliefs and so on. And that's why I think it's good to start at the local level, because there are just less people, less stakeholders. And you can, I want to make a practical example. We talk a lot about social division and polarization. And I think one key thing to do to overcome division and counteract polarization is to bring people together from different groups in society. You can do it by a street festival. You can do it in school if you have proper school districts. You can do it in other festivals and with other activities. So you can start in a very practical way to change something. Of course, it's important to try to impact the world stage as well. But I think you can implement tangible projects on the local level, which finally will have also or create global impact as well. Because if you bring people from different groups together, they will have less stereotypes about each other, and eventually see diversity in general from a different point of view, because they got to know a concrete human being, which might be their friend or their neighbor or something like that. So that's why I think concrete, tangible projects at the local level create much more impact than we sometimes think.
Since you are the program manager for ACT Now, which is an international program run by the Innovation in Politics Institute, let's talk about action. And I know that while we are talking about the idea of the localhood, in one of the interviews, you also said that reducing the complexity goes hand in hand with the possibility for concrete scenarios. So it's just easier to act. And you are trying to even boost that with the idea of the local labs. And could you just also explain what are the local labs doing? Because I'm really interested in this form of action.
Yeah, well, the local labs are a structured but creative design thinking process for the city halls. And we tried to translate the tools of design thinking into the world of local communities and city halls. And because we think, okay, we have to drive local innovation, we have to boost it, but we have to do it in a different way than we did it in the past. And we can learn a lot from product development for creating sustainable and smart practices. For instance, in product development, you need a diverse team to gather different perspectives from different people to create a great product. And I think to create sustainable policy, you have to also gather a very diverse group of people and think about how we can solve a problem or improve our communities. That's one thing. And another thing is that it's a really, really creative but structured 2 or 5 day process where, as I said, a diverse group of people comes together and goes through 5 stages, understand the problem in more detail. It's similar to the product development or the design thinking process. And at the end, to come up with a real solution for a problem. Because I think participation is key to improve politics and to create better policies. But you have to do participation in a good way to create impact. Because otherwise it often leads to frustration if, for instance, only certain kind of people comes to participation events, or there are some people talking too much during these events. You have to also involve the silent groups, which is really, really key for smart practices. And the local labs offers a methodology to exactly that, to have a structured process for a complex problem and come up with a sustainable solution.
You said that the first step is to identify the problems, the challenges. And I know that you as a group, as a program, identified several of them as migration flows, the climate crisis, or increasing social division resulting from the mentioned before COVID pandemic. What do you think is the biggest challenge of those? Or maybe there are some other challenges that I didn't mention, but are extremely, extremely important to address by the local communities and not only.
To identify the biggest challenge is really hard because I think each local community is so unique. So they have to figure out which challenge is most pressing to them. And of course, I have some ideas. What might be the most influential crisis? In my eyes, it's the climate crisis because it's so huge. But all these crises, social division, economic decline, climate change, war now again, unfortunately, are also so interconnected so that you shouldn't focus on one crisis and let the others slip away. So I think local communities have to find out which is most pressing to them. And we have to always also get the whole picture of crisis in our times.
One of the measures of the support or frameworks you provide as well as an institute is the Act Now network. And this is also something I would like to talk about. So how could we briefly introduce the concept behind it?
Well, the Act Now Mayors Network is a community of like-minded local leaders from, I always say, from Finland to Jordan, so it's quite diverse. And it's not so much about the size of the city, but rather how these local leaders try to create or make a difference in their communities. So we try to connect and support local leaders who are value-driven. And we have 5 principles, which are the foundation of the network. And secondly, who really want to try to be innovative, to try new things, to implement new practices, who have convincing narratives. So we really want to boost those local leaders who might implement transformative policies, and so to create impact as an institute.
And here I think it's a good moment to develop this concept even further and mention the specific programs or events. And here I would like to talk about the Act Now Mayors Network and the conference, because this is the main reason that we are meeting here in Stuttgart. I was wondering, if we talk about inviting all different mayors to the network, it's a lot of people from different parts of the world. And I'm just thinking, like, how can you successfully bring them together? I really like also a quote of yours that I saw, that you are not a huge fan of those conferences where you just come, you see some talks, some panel discussions, and then you just run to the buffet, eat, and then just leave, because there is no change after such an event. So how does this process of organizing such a meeting, such a platform looks like in your team, in your eyes?
Well, the basic question is, how can a conference create impact? Because we use a lot of resources to bring people to Stuttgart, and I wouldn't be satisfied if nothing changes afterwards in the communities where the people are coming from. So we asked ourselves, okay, how do we have to design an event that changes people, or that motivates and inspire people, and that equips people or leaders or local innovators with skills so that they can change something in their communities. And that's why we try we created very different formats. We have classic panel discussions, because I believe that's key to get to know new ideas, to get to know narratives from leading voices in the debates. But we also have a lot of small group formats. For instance, best practice exchange. For instance, local leadership trainings, which offers new skills for the challenges to come, but also fireside chats to have a more informal setting for discussions. And we try to create as many interactions as possible. And there are not only mayors at the conference, there are also young people at the conference. And we also want them equip and inspire them to become change makers in their communities. And last but not least, we also are trying to create a positive vibe. Mayors have to deal with a lot of public pressure, sometimes hostility, sometimes even hatred on social media, which sometimes even spill over to personal threats. And we want to encourage them that they are not alone in their fight, and it's worth fighting the good fight day in and day out, and to be resilient and to try new things, and to create and to try to change something, because it's way easier to be in office and do nothing. And we want to encourage them to be in office and to do a lot, and to try new things, and to engage with people, and to involve their citizens at the end of the day to implement transformative policies.
We are talking about the need or the willingness to create a global impact and a global change. So why mayors?
Well, as I said, I think the local level is our best chance to create transformative action. And I think mayors are in the good position to put forward progressive agenda and to lead the way. And mayors, they feel very much responsible for their citizens. They are closer to their citizens as other politicians, and they can bring people together, and they can try new things in the city. So for instance, the example from Paris after COVID or during COVID, they just set up new bike lanes just to try it out. Maybe it works, maybe it won't. But you have in the city, or as a mayor in local communities, you have the chance to really try something new. And that's why I think mayors are a great people, or a great approach to really change something in our lives and to try something new, because we need that very, very hard.
I hope that some mayors or maybe some city officials are listening to this conversation. And if they would like to be a part of the network, how can they do that?
Well, it's pretty easy. Go to our website. I think we can put the link into the show notes and apply. If you support our values, our principles, and want to be a mayor who creates some change, then you're definitely at the right address with the Innovation Politics Institute and the Act Now Mayors Network.
We discussed empowering the local change makers, and we also mentioned that the Act Now Mayors Conference is one of them. And we also mentioned that you would really like this meeting, and not only this meeting, but in general, the projects, the initiatives you create to leave some trace. And we've been also talking just a minute ago that you would be like really disappointed if so many people would just came here and they would just talk and leave and nothing would happen. So just to develop this thread a bit more, how could we make this conference and not only to be a really strong one?
I think we have to inspire the people who are at the conference. But for me, inspiration is also not enough, because sometimes I've experiencing, or I have the feeling that we are too much satisfied with buzzwords. So we talk about inclusion, about empowerment, about sustainability, and about participation. And we say these words without really knowing what we are meaning. And that's why I think we need both. We need inspiration. We need a positive community vibe. We need a community of like-minded people who want to really change something on the one side, but on the other side, we need the skills, we need the ideas, we need the best practices to really do so. And everyone who really want to engage with their citizens and try new things like the local labs, they are more than invited to get in touch with us and to have a more sustainable, now I'm saying the word myself, but to have a more sustainable partnership, because I think a conference can be a boost, but you have to go for the long run. And that's why we created the local labs. And we have also a supporting program for those people who did the local labs so that they implement the ideas from the local labs. So everyone who is eager to work with the Innovation Politics Institute in a more long-term way, they are more than invited to get in touch with us. But I hope the conference itself will be such a boost, not only an inspirational one, but also in terms of skills and insights and expertise. So people are really equipped to go home and change something, because they're full of ideas and full of new ways to do that.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I really love this energy and the spirit that is being created during such a conference. And after event like this, people are very, very motivated. But I'm also pretty sure that, I don't know if it's unfortunately maybe, but like when this episode is released, the conference is already over. So if someone got just inspired by that, how can he or she be more involved? So I'm meaning here, will there be future events of the conference, or what will be other types of events that people could be involved into?
Well, we as an institute have many different programs where people can get involved. For instance, we have the Innovation Politics Award, where we reward bold, innovative politicians who have implemented some innovative projects. We have the European Capital of Democracy, which will be a huge program where citizens a citizens jury can choose the next European Capital of Democracy. And of course, we have the ECNAU Mayors Conference and the local labs. And if you're a mayor or a young change maker or a local innovator, there's definitely space for you to connect with us and to play a part and to share your experiences and learn new stuff at these events.
Let me also come back for a moment to this edition of the conference, because I think that this is this very unique one. One of the main topics, or maybe actually a leading topic, is Mayors for Mayors. We stand with Ukraine. And I know that there are some Ukrainian mayors invited as well. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts around this one? Because it's such a unique situation that we are just facing right now. If it comes to Ukrainian mayors also attending and sharing their thoughts from what they have experienced over the last 2 months. So how do you approach that? What can we learn from that?
1 year ago, we chose the title Global Crisis Call for Local Innovation. And we developed 5 core themes: economic transformation, social cohesion, climate action, and democratic solutions. And then, 2.5 months before the conference, the war started, or the Russian invasion started. And it was clear from the first moment that we had to adapt and we had to include this topic. And we were thinking about how we can formulate a good core theme, because, of course, we are not the UN or something like that, or the European Union. So we want to focus on mayors. And I think sharing experiences is the first step to become aware of the situation in Ukraine, and also to show our support for the Ukrainian mayors and the Ukrainian communities. And that's why we invited Ukrainian mayors to, it's of course digitally, but still they will have the very first panel to share their situation, their needs. And yeah, it's one core idea of the Act Now Mayors conferences that we come together to share our experiences. And so that people become aware of different places in the world, because sometimes we are so focused on our own problems and stuff that we completely lose the connection to other places in the world. And there again, I think cities and local communities offer a good framework to become connected.
Yes, I think it's a very good idea. And also maybe at the end, if we could just mention the different themes, because there are 4 different themes as well. And I was wondering, how would you address those? We talked already about the economic transformation, the climate action, the democratic solutions, and the social cohesion. How should we go about those?
The basic idea is that transformation is a buzzword as well. So we have to fill it with content. And we tested different core themes with our community, which are the most relevant one. And so we came up with those 4. And then in February, we had the 5th one with the Ukraine core theme. For each core theme, economic transformation, social cohesion, democratic solutions, and climate action, we have different formats at the conference. We have panel discussions to have leading voices exploring and discussing convincing narratives about these themes. So mayors need to be equipped with good arguments and with good reasons to work in this direction. We have, secondly, best practice exchanges. So they will get to know what other communities or other municipalities do in these fields. Then we will have field trips in Stuttgart to get to know Lighthouse Project here on site. So they see and get a feeling for real projects, for tangible projects, what they could do in their communities as well. And we also have fireside chats to have a more, as I said, a more informal and in-depth discussion on these topics. So we try to come from different directions to inspire local leaders to create action when they're back home.
And since we, during our conversation, talk a lot about education, about the knowledge exchange, my last question, which is a book recommendation, could you share something that really, really made you interested in some topics so that the listeners could also dive into that?
Well, as I work so much with mayors and I'm really interested in their work and their potential impact, I have to mention If Mayors Rule the World from Benjamin Barber. I think it offers a great insight into charismatic and impactful mayors from bigger cities. There should be also a book about mayors from smaller cities. Maybe I will write it one day. But I think mayors are really interesting political figures, as they are more, I think they have a greater sense of responsibilities for their citizens, and they have this local taste. And I really, really love this combination, and I really can recommend this book. And Benjamin Barber was a great public intellectual, and we miss him a lot. And that's why everyone who listens to this podcast should read this book.
Thank you very much, Mathis. It was extremely big pleasure to talk to you about it. And I'm wondering about your last remark, because I know, of course, that nowadays it's extremely hard or almost impossible to foresee the future. But if we imagine that it is Wednesday or Thursday next week, because we are recording that during the weekend, so I mean the next week in which the episode is being released, like what would be your ideal scenario for the conference? What should happen at the conference that you would be really satisfied and you would perceive it as a success?
From an organizational point of view, that nothing big goes wrong. So that everyone is healthy and safe and had a good time during the conference. But of course, the ideal scenario would be that a lot of people text me and say, thank you so much for the inspiration. I have 10 ideas and I will try 9 of them in my community back home, and that people are motivated and committed and equipped really to set up some new, interesting and hopefully sustainable projects for their communities.
Thank you, Mathis. And now let's go and meet inspiring people at the conference.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the newest episode of Urbcast. And as you might realize, it was a recorded pre-conference. So the conference has ended right now, and you will be able to see the results of it while following the Act Now and Mathis as well on social media and not only. You can find the links to the Innovation in Politics Institute and the conference in the episode's description. And if you would like to be involved in the future actions, in the future initiatives of the Institute, as well as the Act Now, feel free to reach out to Mathis and his team. Thank you very much for listening and talk to you soon.